This right here is Amaranthus palmeri, or careless weed. It often grows in disturbed areas like this, but it is native. Now, the seeds of various Amaranthus species were eaten by the Apache, Caddo, Calpella, Cahuilla, Concow, Dene, Gosiute, Hopi, Kiowa, Klamath, Little Lake, Nomlaki, Pomo, Seri, Wailaki, Yokia, Yuki, Zuni, Montana natives, and Western natives. So species eaten include Amaranthus albidus, Amaranthus blatoides, Amaranthus cruentus, Amaranthus fimbriatus, Amaranthus hypochondriacus, Amaranthus palmeri, this one, Amaranthus retroflexus, and Amaranthus watsonii. So these seed heads or infructescences were cut or broken from the plant and gathered in a container by the Apache. The seeds were isolated by rubbing the seed heads between the hands, like threshing, over a buckskin cloth or a basket, then winnowing off the debris. This was done by the Apache, Cahuilla, and Seri. Whole plants were also gathered and dried before threshing by the Western natives. And seeds were sometimes parched by the Dene, Tanano, Oadham, and Seri, or they were eaten raw by the Zuni, and they were parched by shaking them in a basket with live coals by the Tonaotham. And the seeds were ground into a meal by the Apache, Cahuilla, Dene, Hopi, Kiowa, and Seri. And this meal was eaten as a pinole by the Dene and Kiowa, or as a drink by the Cahuilla, as a mush by the Cahuilla, Dene, or Seri, and was formed into cakes or bread by the Apache, Cahuilla, and Zuni. So amaranth seeds were produced in incredible abundance and were a very important food source among the Apache, Gosiute, Seri, Tonaotham, and Western natives. And so these seeds were sun-dried and stored by the Dene, Hopi, Kiowa, Tonaotham, and Seri, and sometimes kept in sealed pottery jars by the Seri. So amaranthus species, including Amaranthus cruentus, Amaranthus hypochondriacus, Amaranthus retroflexus, were cultivated by the southern Paiutes or allowed to volunteer in gardens by the Hopi and Round Valley natives for use as food. The seeds were gathered in September by the Tonaotham, but they vary by species. So the foliage of various amaranth species was eaten by the Apache, Cahuilla, Dene, Hopi, Isleta, Jemez, Kiowa, Southern Paiutes, Seri, Tewa, Tonaotham, Montana natives, and Western natives. And species eaten for their foliage include Amaranthus acanthochyton, Amaranthus albus, Amaranthus blatoides, Amaranthus cruentus, Amaranthus fimbriatus, Amaranthus graescens, Amaranthus hypochondriacus, Amaranthus palmeri, this one, Amaranthus retroflexus, Amaranthus torii, and Amaranthus watsonii. Now, these above ground parts were all eaten, especially the young leaves and the shoots. And the plants were eaten boiled, fried, in soups or in stews by the Apache, Cahuilla, Dene, Hopi, Isleta, Jemez, Kiowa, Seri, Tewa, Tonaotham, and West Montana natives. They were sometimes boiled and then fried by the Dene, Kiowa, Seri, and Tewa, and the foliage was sometimes just eaten raw by the Apache, Isleta, and Jemez. And these greens were an important food source of the Kiowa, Hopi, and Tonaotham. And the foliage was hung in Hopi houses for storage. So the foliage was gathered in late summer or July and August, but it depends on species again. And this one was found right now in late December. So the amaranth grains have been cultivated for more than 8,000 years in Mesoamerica and the Andes Mountains, and they're still grown commercially for grain and leafy vegetables, especially Amaranthus caudatus, Amaranthus cruentus, and Amaranthus hypochondriacus. So amaranthus species are herbaceous annuals, and they're found throughout the U.S., with more species occurring in the southern states. And some species actually form tumbleweeds. They can grow in low mats or reach up to 6 feet tall. So the plants have a simple alternate leaves, usually ovate to lanceolate in shape, are generally green, but some are reddish or grayish, particularly Amaranthus cruentus is very reddish. And the flower and seeds are very small and are densely packed on these terminal spikes. They grow in many habitats and they often thrive in disturbed areas, so they're quite tolerant of drought and poor soils, with many being capable of growing even in urban asphalt habitats. So amaranth grains contain 15 to 18% protein, 6 to 8% fat, and 60 to 65% carbohydrates, and they're rich in lysine, tryptophan, and sulfur amino acids. So the lysine and tryptophan content, as well as its poor leucine content, make it an excellent complement to maize, which is poor in lysine and tryptophan and rich in leucine. So amaranth grain is rich in linoleic and palmitic acids. And amaranth above ground parts, like this foliage, contain about 16 to 30% protein, 11 to 24% fiber, and 2 to 3% fat, depending on the growth stage. Now, younger plants, for 80 days and less, have a higher protein and a lower fiber than older plants. So the foliage is available for most of the year, except during the coldest season. The flowering and fruiting seasons vary between species, and both can occur year-round, usually from mid to late winter. And the seeds most commonly ripen from late summer through early fall. And the foliage of various amaranth species, especially when young, is quite palatable and serves as an excellent substitute for spinach and other leafy greens. It can also be dried for storage, and the seeds are best gathered by cutting off the seed heads just after the seeds fully develop. This one's still flowering, but before they have dried and dropped off. So these seed heads can be dried and then threshed over a fabric sheet by striking them with a stick or rubbing them by hand. And the tiny seeds can then be gathered together and the debris winnowed off in a gentle breeze. So these can be cooked and eaten like quinoa. So an incredibly useful genus of plants, and this one is the most common in the Austin area, and in many areas of North America it's considered just a complete weed, and farmers will hate it and pay a lot to get rid of it, but it is extremely nutritious and valuable plant. So try it, look for it. Amaranthus palmeri, or just any amaranth. And this video script is entirely from my book, Native Food Plants of Texas. You can get the paperback or ebook I'll have the links in the description or whatever.